This is the outbreast pocket sample, which is obviously the pocket that we use to hold the pocket square in the jacket. I understand this to be the neatest method when it's done correctly, but I am going to show a different method when I show you making my jacket. This is also the pocket used for bespoke waistcoats rather than single jetted pockets. The more you know. On my fabric of choice, I am going to make a straight line 10 centimeters long. On one side, I will mark upwards 1.5 centimeters, then joining that to the other side of my 10 centimeter line. Mark a vertical line 3 centimeters from one edge of the pocket. Line a single layer of cloth over the pocket line that is at least 18 centimeters across and 20 centimeters tall. Lay it right side up. We will chalk straight onto the outside of the cloth. Copy off the pocket line and either side of the pocket, adding 3 centimeters to the other side as well. Above the pocket line, mark 0.5 centimeter and then 2.5 centimeters above that. 1.5 centimeters above that and 0.5 centimeter above that for the welt and its seam allowances. From the 2.5 centimeter line, make perpendicular lines from the edges of the pocket hole. Cut the two out. With the welt, we will end up with a shape that when laid as we cut it, either edge goes up vertically 3 centimeters, then angles for 2 centimeters. Best mark on the wrong sides. Take 2 pieces of silicea 16 by 19 centimeters and use the welt to trace the angle of the pocket and cut it off of them. On the jacket, mark 0.5 centimeter above the pocket line, which will be used to line up the welt and bearer. On the welt, baste a piece of silicea or linen 2.5 centimeters tall onto the 3 centimeter portion of the welt, above the 0.5 centimeter seam allowance that I chalk onto the back. Line up one of the pieces of silicea with the angled side to the top of the welt. You can see that I fold the welt along the middle line between the 2.5 and 1.5 centimeter portion to make sure I will create linear edges when it's folded. We are joining the silicea to the 1.5 centimeter side. Machine them together with a 0.5 centimeter seam allowance, with or without backtacking, it doesn't matter. Iron the silicea down. Again, I fold it along the top edge line and lay it onto the proverbial jacket to make sure that all the lines are vertical and are with the grain of the jacket. Line the other piece of silicea up to the bearer such that it will create a straight shape when folded open. Machine it with a nondescript foot's width. Iron the silicea down again. At the pocket, mark on the reverse where the edges of the pocket are and fuse two small 3x3cm squares of fusing there. Then baste a piece of linen over the back of the pocket. Finally, on the welt we need to mark the edges of the pocket opening onto the wrong side, so that we can best align it to the pocket hole on the jacket. Line the welt up to the line you chalked above the pocket line. Baste it in place. As with most pockets like this, I want to baste from the outside pocket edges and fasten securely so that nothing moves in the machine. Chalk on the edges of the pocket. It is important that the edges that we chalk on are still in line with the original vertical lines, and we do not make them perpendicular to the pocket opening. With the bearer, line that up as well, keeping the edges in line with the welt's edges. Fix it in place. Machine them both with a normal 1/2 centimeter seam allowance, thereby fixing the bottom of the welt at the bottom point of your pocket as designed. Remove the 3 pieces of basting. As with welt pockets, open up the pocket hole. Stop shy less than 1 centimeter of the stitching and cut diagonally from there to the ends of the stitches, comparable to every other welt pocket, but we're cutting the miters slightly smaller. Fold the welt upwards and from the back open up the seam, making sure the loose parts of the cloth either side are folded and ironed up in line with the sewn portion of the welt. Do not pull open the miters or iron them open, leave the miters as they are. For the eagle-eyed among us, yes, I did iron my miters out. Don't do it though, I unironed them later. Fold the welt over itself so that the front is 2.5 centimeters tall from the seam. We can baste it along the line. We need to cut the welt's silicea at the pocket opening to the width of the pocket opening so that it can fit cleanly through. To do this, you might like to hold your jacket up by the welt so that the fabric and silicea drape, and we can cut the silicea level with the bottom of the welt. Place the welt's silicea through the pocket hole and it should sit flat, with raw edges of the silicea either side of the fabric. With everything lying flat, I'm going to open up the seam allowance of the bearer. I will then fold the bearer and its silesia down into the hole, like we often do, making sure either side of the cloth, which isn't machined, is folded and creased in the same way as the machined portion. Temporarily baste the welt in place and check that the welt is positioned the way you want it. With it secured, move both the jacket material and the back of the pocket out of the way and machine along the seam allowance, fastening the welt's silesia and the seam allowance of the pocket opening together. Remove the baste holding the welt down. I'm just pressing in the bottom of the welt a little bit more. It looked like it was losing its crease. At any point you feel something needs it, just give it a press. I am drawing on the perimeter of my pocket now, parallel with the grain of my fabric. I have no particular depth, just a centimetre or more above the higher piece of silesia. We are folding the flapping edges of the welt inwards. Fold them so that we have parallel vertical lines for the pocket. When our pocket is properly angled, one side should disappear behind the welt while the other one sticks out. Iron the welt, giving us creases on both sides. On both sides, hold the inlay of the welt in place and fold out the welt to allow us to stitch down the creases we made. Don't extend upwards beyond the top of the welt, and don't let the welt move from where we want it. I give both sides a basic slightly wide pilot stitch before finalizing them, remachining over them, properly backtacking this time. Leave them as they are for now. We are sewing the pocket closed, machine around the perimeter of the pocket. We want to fold the welt that sticks out of the pocket down into the pocket and snuggle the top edge into the crease. We'll do practically the same stitch as we did to sew the sides of the welt down in the first place, but catch the edge of the welt too, no more than 1 or 2 centimeters from the other stitch already in there. We're going to cut away the extra fabric from both sides of the welt. Cut it down very closely without jeopardizing the stitches, and we can cut as closely as 1 or 2 millimeters. The one hidden behind the welt will be hidden, and the other has been folded over so it has a clean edge at the uppermost point. From behind, fasten some thread at the top corners of the welts. Come through the fabric right on the corner of the welt. Make a few tiny fell stitches across the top of the pocket. Make a few tiny fell stitches across the top of the pocket. We want to pull the pocket opening upwards as we fell through it in order to make certain that the pocket doesn't collapse into a curve. We only need to pass where the folded portion of the welts are trimmed to. Send the needle to the back of the fabric. We are going to stitch through most of the welt, basically a prick stitch. We don't want the stitching to be visible on the outside though. Given the amount we are stitching through, we can't do many stitches down the welt because it's so thick. We want to stitch to a little below the welt, and then we're going to stagger the stitches and go back upwards again. This will strongly hold the welt down, giving the cleanest finish that we can. Fasten the thread at the top and just cut it. It'll be covered by lining. It'll be covered by canvas even. Check the inside of the pocket to make sure that the raw edge of the welt is hidden. My first one isn't, so I do re-sew it in a minute. Do both sides. Done identically, since the folded portion of the welt on both sides is equally hidden now. That was a cut where I did re-sew my first side. I don't suggest taking out the welt baste yet. I just forgot to do the prick stitch, which is where the obvious reshoots are. I'd put away almost all of my equipment for moving out. We can press our pocket and surroundings flat and neat. To prick stitch, we can start in the same place where we fasten the thread for finishing the edges of the welt, and fasten some more thread. Go out to the front of the welt near the top. It's a very simple case of prick stitching across the edge so that it doesn't lose its edge and roll one way or the other. You can do the normal prick stitch or the double prick stitch, but I'm doing the prick stitch that gives us a smaller amount of exposed thread on the off side while not taking nearly as long as the double prick. Going into a single layer of the cloth, and once we reach our desired stitch length, digging into the other layer of cloth, immediately coming back up to pull the thread through, completing the stitch, etc., etc. On the other side of the pocket, fasten the thread in the same way, and there's no reason to have an outbreast pocket without a pocket square. Et voilà!